Hello, I'm Maxie Moyer and welcome to this week's playlist, John Peel's Stars. This playlist is a selection of 25 tracks from artists championed by the British disc jockey John Peel. From 1967 on Pirate Radio London and into the 1990s with BBC Radio and other broadcasters around Europe, he brought groundbreaking bands to the attention of huge listening audiences. Artists in my playlist range from the Velvet Underground in 1967 to the White Stripes in 2005. The quality and strength of their music speaks for itself. Of John Peel the man, there is so much to remember for those who enjoyed his radio shows at the time, and plenty to interest music lovers since. Wikipedia describes the young John Peel as an avid radio listener and record collector who tuned in regularly to the American Forces Network and Radio Luxembourg. He recalled that from early on he wanted a radio programme of his own so that he could play music that he heard and wanted others to hear. One of his reports from Shrewsbury boarding school in England pondered, "Perhaps it's possible that John can form some kind of nightmarish career out of his enthusiasm for unlistenable records and his delight in writing long and facetious essays." As a father, John Peel was clear about his demise. "I definitely want to be buried, although not yet. I'm 61 on Wednesday, just a working day for me, I'm afraid. So actually I should have a mile or two left in me. But I do want the children to be able to stand solemnly at my graveside and think lovely thoughts along the lines of, 'Get out of that one, you swine,' which they won't be able to do if I've been cremated." In the event, his coffin was carried out to the sound of a favourite song, Teenage Kicks by the Undertones, track 3 on my playlist. True to request, his gravestone carries a simple quote from the song's lyrics. "Teenage dreams, so hard to beat." John Peel was a big supporter of Led Zeppelin in the late 1960s and 70s. He was keen to make clear that whilst he helped widen the audience for them and other promising acts, it was not down to self-promotion. "A lot of people say, 'You've been kind of instrumental in the career of—'" They've always mentioned Led Zeppelin for some reason, but I don't think of it in those terms. I don't do what I do either to win praise or fame for myself, but because I like doing it. Although I came late to Led Zeppelin, being more into Roy Harper at the time, I fully agree with votes of appreciation for Whole Lot of Love, track 22 on my playlist. The song was named the third greatest rock song of all time in 2009 by VH1, the New York City cable television network. In 2014, the distinctive playing of Jimmy Page was voted greatest guitar riff by BBC Radio 2 listeners. For a few years in the mid-1960s, the Velvet Underground, playlist track 8, were inspired and very effectively promoted by pop art founder Andy Warhol. Sunday Morning was the final song for their debut album Velvet Underground and Nico. The recording was more heavily produced in expectation of chart success, and Nico was the stage name of German singer-songwriter, model and actress Christa Pfeffgen, another of Warhol's protégés. In addition to providing the band with Nico as their chanteuse, Warhol also suggested a theme for the song. "Why don't you just make it a song about paranoia?" Lou Reed duly obliged, and the album was released. Like recordings by other John Peel's favourite bands, but by no means all, Velvet Underground and Nico achieved only modest commercial success, but had immeasurable influence on the music scene. As Brian Eno astutely observed, although their first album sold only 30,000 copies, everyone who bought one of those 30,000 copies started a band. Far Out magazine recalls that between 1972 and 1976 there weren't many John Peel shows which didn't feature Roxy music. Brian Ferry started the band in late 1970 after losing his job teaching ceramics at a girls' school for breaking off to play records. The name was partly an homage to the old cinemas and dance halls, partly a pun on the word rock. Virginia Plain, playlist track 9, was released as their debut single in August 1972 and became a top 10 hit in the UK. It is memorable in part for the quiet intro that instantly gains volume as Ferry's vocals kick in. Connections with pop art and Andy Warhol are also evident. As a former art student, Ferry took the song's title, Virginia Plain, from one of his paintings showing packaging from the cigarette brand. Meanwhile, the lyrics refer to one of Warhol's superstar clique of New York City personalities, Baby Jane Holzer. Band member Phil Manzanera, who improvised a guitar solo on Virginia Plain, later claimed he played the first thing that came into his head, a daring approach not miles apart from recording practice at Warhol's factory studio. It's inspirational that a single, privately educated DJ from Merseyside with an ear for groundbreaking contemporary music and the common touch was able to give so many and so varied artists significant exposure early in their careers. It's astonishing how the spirited sound of those artists still brings musical joy to millions decades later and still counting. Thank you, John Peel. Rock on.